All right. Now, my friends, we are learning a speech that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave in 1991, Tafshin Nun Aleph. This was like a year before he had a stroke, which rendered him paralyzed and he couldn't speak. Okay. So these messages are, every message of the Rebbe is very important, but this has a sort of increased importance because it's like getting near to the summation, the summary of the whole of the Rebbe's message. Of course, what is the Rebbe's message? Just like we learned before, God, to think about God, to be aware of God, to be close to God. That's Moshiach. Moshiach will make the whole world aware of God. Like he says, he'll fill the world with awareness of God, like water fills the ocean. So is this possible? Is it practical? Yes, the Rebbe wants to say, not only is it possible, not only is it practical, but that's the way it is now. We just have to be aware of it. But there's also another thing, is that God also does his part. And God makes himself aware in higher ways that we can possibly imagine. That God creates the world all the time. And he's creating us. That happens to be, according to Hasidic teachings, I don't want to disappoint anyone, it's the lowest aspect of God that there is, that God creates the world. Even though in some ways it comes from God's essence, but still that God creates the world, that's the lowest aspect of God. Nature, that's what we say the name Elohim. Elohim, we say, but we don't say that God's name is Elohim. That's the aspect of God that creates the world. It's called Elohim. The word Elohim is even plural. It's plural to show that it seems that God is very plural and that there's the world and there's also him, and then there's also broken and all of these other things. I mean, it's no wonder that the Hindus and these people, they make all these different gods. The God of power, the God of love, the God of this and the God, because, the Greeks had it the same thing. The Romans had it the same thing. All these different gods that they had. Why? Because all these things are totally not understandable. Where does love come from? Where does power come from? Where does success come from? This is like big mysteries. They just sort of pop out from nowhere. Victory and the God of war, the God of fire and the God of pleasure. And these are very amazing things, right? Very amazing things. But in fact, they are all creations. Don't get too excited about them because they're just all creations. And the purpose of the Jewish people is to go out of this. In Egypt also, the idea of Passover, the Jewish people left Egypt. Egypt had this whole big array of gods also. They worshiped almost anything that walks, and maybe things that don't walk also. They worshiped the planets, they worshiped they worshiped the sheep. It says the sheep was one of their big gods. They worshiped the river. It says that the river they worshiped because it was the source of their how do you say, their parnasa, their sustenance from the river. And there's all these statues of cats and things like that. The Egyptians worshipped everything, and it worked. And it worked. They ruled the whole world until they made the mistake of imprisoning the Jews. So then it didn't go so well for them afterwards. Then it did this. But the fact is that idol worship and worshiping the sun and the moon and the stars. The Jewish people worshiped the golden calf. They worshiped at the whole first temple. The 10 tribes worshiped 2 golden calves. They worshiped almost everything they could worship. They worship because all these things are big mysteries, and it's very enticing to worshiping. In a way you can't blame. That's how God could forgive the Jewish people. You can't blame them because that's the way God. How do you say? He created us with this with this catch inside of us that we like to do bad things. That's called the animal soul. God gave us this urge to do bad things, and then he gave us the Torah that tells us not to do them. Don't give us the urge and don't give us the Torah. Who needs it? Says good. Then we'll be like angels. That's what the angels are. The angels, they just want to do good, they want God, and that's not what God wants. That's what God wants. So to speak, reality only began when God created the world. You say, how could the world be 5,000 years old? It can't possibly be 5 trillion years old. That doesn't solve the problem. The question is, where did it come from? Where did the world come from? So God didn't create the world 5,000 years. He tried it 5 trillion years ago, okay? But he created something, started it. How did it start? Right? Question number one, how did it start? So the Greeks said it just was always here. What's the problem? It just was always here. You can't imagine, right? Just like if you can imagine what the end of the universe is, it go up, right? What would the end be? You can't imagine. So you can't imagine where it started. It's the problem, right? Could be. You have to have, it has to be a certain degree of emunah, and also has to be a faith to believe that there is God, and also to be faith to how do you say, to turn away from all these false gods that they've got. And Christianity is the example. They got 2.5 billion people that are involved in idolatry, believing in a person. This person is God, is the Son of God. He changed the Torah. This is idolatry. It's not punishable. It's what's called partnership, but it's idolatry. So the idea of going out of Egypt is going out of all of these urges that God implanted in us. Right? You can't blame these people for doing idolatry. It's not that everybody's going to burn in hell. They're doing this. Not so. They're worshiping idols because that's the way God made everybody. But we're supposed to, right, not use excuses and do what God wants. That's the whole point of the creation. So says the Rebbe, that's what's hinted at also. And when the Rebbe gave the speech, the calendar wasn't exactly the same way as it is now. When the Rebbe gave the speech, it fell out Vayikra. They were reading Vayikra, and they were reading, and it was Parshat HaChodesh, Chodesh Elochem, and also it was Rosh Chodesh. So they took out 3 Sefer Torahs. So that's not the way it is this year, but still we can learn the lesson from all of these 3 things: Vayikra and Parshat HaChodesh, namely HaChodesh Elochem, that the Jewish people have the commandment of sanctifying the month. And it was Rosh Chodesh. It was the first day of the month. In fact, it was the first day of the month. So the Rebbe said we can learn 3 things from this. HaChodesh Elochem, that was the preparation of going out of Egypt. Going out of Egypt was jumping. Pesach means to jump with 2 feet. No matter where you are, no matter how low you are, no matter how messed up your life is, you can always jump out with 2 feet and leave the past behind totally. But that's like a one-time thing. You can't keep living your life all the time jumping around, right? Jumping out of yourself and jumping out of yourself. Who knows where you're going to jump next time? So it says that's the idea of Rosh Chodesh. The Rosh Chodesh is a certain day of the week, came out on Shabbat, that we can incorporate this novelty of living in a miraculous way, in a constant way, day to day. In a day-to-day way. And Vayikra, Moshe, that's like we just finished learning, that God helps us. God calls to us and helps us. Okay. According to what we said before, that we took out these 3 Sefer Torahs, this makes a chazaka. Chazaka means it's a certainty that something is going to, we can assume that something is going to continue. Al klalas avoda, this is a chazaka. This is makes us certain in serving God in a way of miraculousness. All these 3 things that I said before, jumping and a new month, and that God calls to us, all these things hint at being above nature, going above our nature and above our habit. Or in simple language, every moment is brand new. Every moment becomes an interesting surprise. That's a good thing about children. A child, he's not in the world very long. So if he has a positive, the surrounding environment, so everything is new, right? Because they can walk on the street, they look at a flower, they look at a thing, they look, oh, look at this, look at the ants going in this thing. Phew, it's just amazing. When he comes late to class, Yesh Leber, I just reminded myself that used to be me. I used to take, I lived in Detroit. The school was like down the street from where I was. It used to take me sometimes an hour to get there. It was like a 5-minute walk, right? And I would look at an ant walking, a flower, a thing, or the sky going the wrong direction. Yesh Lever. So they called me down to the principal's office, I remember, because I was coming late all the time. And it took me like 15 minutes to get there. The principal's office was 2 minutes away. It took like 15 minutes to get there. I went in the wrong direction, and then he started talking to someone. A kid, what do you a kid? Yesh Leber, we can explain these two opinions in learning the laws of Pesach before Passover. Okay, now we're going to have Passover. Passover is going to be in another, 3 weeks. We have to prepare ourselves. We were supposed to begin preparing a month before Passover. It says, Shoalim v'dorshim b'hilchos Pesach kodem Pesach shloshim yom. It says you're supposed to learn the laws of Passover before Passover 30 days. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said only 2 weeks. Okay, 2 weeks. Even though that the laws are shesholam midorshim, the law is not like Rabbi Gamliel. The law is you have to do it 30 days, and it's not like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. But why even tell us about it if the law is not like him? Nevertheless, in addition to the fact then all arguments that there are in the Talmud, the rabbis say elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. Every opinion in the Talmud is the words of the living God. Even opinion that's not the law. It is the opinion of God. So what do you mean? You mean God is wrong? One opinion is God, and the other opinion is also God. But only one opinion is right. So when you want to say God is like half right, he's half wrong. What does God put an opinion in the Torah that it's not right? Why would he have a thing like that? So first of all, the answer to that is that God is not us. God is not us. And therefore, we have an opinion that's not accepted, so we're wrong. It's not the right opinion. But it's not by God. God can have one opinion that's accepted, the other one's not accepted, and both of them are the words of God. He wants us to learn something from both opinions. Ubafran, and especially about a ruchni, spiritual service in a person, if for certainly you can learn also the opinions that in fact did not come out to be the law. Yeshlomo, we can say, here's an example. You can do the two opinions. We should prepare for Passover 1 month before, which that was Purim. Or we should 2 weeks before, which that's what the Rebbe was saying on that Shabbat, the first day of Nisan. Well, the first day of Nisan this year is going to be on Thursday, this coming Thursday. Upaprashto, it's simply what can we learn from both opinions? 2 weeks and a month. The beginning of learning the laws of Passover should be 30 days before the holiday. But when you come closer and closer to the holiday, namely 2 weeks before, then we have to add on, like Rebbe Shimon Gamliel, and do something additional, learning the laws in a way even higher. Hein bekamus, whether we're talking about in amount of time we spend, and also in eichut, in the depth of the learning that we learn. The Yeshlom, what we can say, the explanation is this according to what's explained, what it says in the Gemara. Time of the reason for Rebbe Shimon Gamliel, only 2 weeks before, then Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses stood, Barosh HaChodesh, he stood in Rosh Chodesh, he stood 2 weeks before Passover. 2 weeks before the Jews got out of Egypt. He stood up in Mazir al Pesach and he told everybody, listen, everybody, we're going to get out of Egypt. Like it says, Chodesh is Elachem Rosh Chodeshim. Like Moses said, this month is going to be the first of the months. Why the first of the months, asks everybody? Because this is going to be the month of redemption. In 2 weeks, you're going to go out of Egypt. Shebezem arumas, this hints at, that which God told us to sanctify the months, and he did it on the first day of Nisan, and that's a way of Nisim, of miracles. The whole month of Nisan is the one of Nisim, of miracles. God took us out of Egypt. This is a netinat koach. This empowers us. This gives us power. Lahosafa, to add learning the laws of Passover. The Rebbe is kind of going to get now. He's going to be very, very practical. Up to now, we've been talking about arousals from below, arousals, loving God. Here we're talking about practical. First of all, learn the laws of Passover from the first day of Nisan to Shabbatot in a way that's higher than learning 30 days before the holiday. 30 days before the holiday, you have to learn the laws in a general way. And 2 weeks before, you have to really intensify your learning. Al derech, like it says, in addition, the miracles that happened on the first day of Nisan regarding the miraculous things that happened before that. The 1 year, there were the plagues. But the Jewish people, they didn't profit that much by the plagues. The plagues were just mostly smote the Egyptians, and it didn't really affect them very much either. We see that in the end, they didn't want to let the Jews go. They ran after the Jews. So it didn't really, all these plagues didn't help really anybody, right? So, but on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, then all of a sudden things really started to get good for the Jews. They started good. That was the redemption really started. Well, Kashem, just like these things were said by learning the laws of Passover, also it is to give chitim, the necessities. It's called chitim, means flour. They give wheat for Passover. That's just a general name for food. But kol tzurich Pesach lenisrachim. There are people who are poor. There are Jews that are poor. Usually, Jews that are poor don't like to admit it. They don't like to say that they're poor. But the fact is that there's a lot of Jews that are poor. There are some Jews that love to say that they're poor. There's some Jews that aren't even poor and they say that they're poor. That's a very rare, exception. The fact is, it's a very rare exception. But it sticks out. But the fact is, there's a lot of Jews that they're poor. They're poor. I happen to know. I remember I had for 3 years, I had a Chabad house in Or Yehuda, a place nearby here. And before Passover, I went around and I visited the houses. People said, no, I don't need anything. But there were a lot of people that knew me. And so I said, you need anything for Passover? And they looked here and they looked there. I said, well, we could use a little bit of something. Maybe, what do you have? I looked, they'd got nothing. A couple of people, I went into their houses. I was just astounded. They opened up the refrigerator. There was nothing in the refrigerator. They didn't know I was coming. There was nothing in the refrigerator. There was like a tomato and a bottle of milk. There's a lot of people that they don't have. So what do? You have to give them money. You have to give them matzot. You have to give them the necessities of the holiday, right? Vegetables, fruits. There's a lot of organizations in Israel that do that. There's a lot of organizations in Chabad and Satmar and all these other, especially the religious ones. A lot of them that they open up and they give to not only to religious people, no, Jews, to non-religious Jews. And in America, they give also to non-Jews. To non-Jews. There's some of them that have soup kitchens that are open the whole week. But here we're talking about especially for the needs of Passover. Passover, there's a lot of necessities for the holiday. It's outside of Israel, it's an 8-day holiday. It's 7 days here. That the beginning of the giving the necessities of the holiday, this should be 30 days before the holiday, but 2 weeks before the holiday, then you have to add even more. And this is why? Because we're given more power and how do you say, from above in the month of Nisan, in a way of Hanhaga Nisit that we can do outside of our nature. And usually you don't give anything to charity, so start giving $1, $2. Usually give $1, give $3. Usually give $3, give $5. Give more. Or if you really believe in this miracle stuff, instead of giving $1, give $10. Instead of giving it to one person, give to 2 people. Instead of waiting for people to ask, go around and look for people who need. Even after you do a time, first of all, you'll discover that you have more money than you think. And second of all, you'll discover that it feels really good to give. And third, you realize that the more you give, that God provides for you also. God really does exist, and God really cares, and He really takes care of people. So don't think, well, I'm going to give away, $1,000, man. How am I going to do it? I'm going to die. I'm going to this. All of a sudden, you realize you gave the money, you didn't even notice it. You don't even notice it. And suddenly you see, all of a sudden, you find more money. You find it. God takes care of the money. Don't worry. You have to be honest, industrious, and God will do the rest. Don't have to be any tricks, and give charity. Every person has to go and think about it. Lasot cheshbon nefesh, and make a reckoning of your soul. If you really gave enough charity before Passover or not, that it should be. Or maybe you can give more charity, and you can learn from God. God gives and doesn't expect anything in return. And if we don't return anything to God, God forbid we do sins, he still keeps giving us. He gives us and gives us. We should also give without any reckoning. Nice to say, but it's not easy to do. God also, after you give the necessities of the holiday as it should be, then you give, in other words, at least 1/10 of all of your possessions, of your earnings of that year, or even you give 1/20th, then you have to start to think, Lefi erech hosafa bebrichato shel Kodesh Baruch Hu b'yamim shebeneim, that the blessings that God is giving me in the meantime, gadol gam haschum, you should increase even more than 1/10 or even more than 1/20th. God is giving me everything. So therefore, we should add on even more, giving the necessities of the holiday, and even more. According to what the rabbis say, aser ta'aser. It says, there's a sentence in the sentence. It says, give a tenth. It says, aser, give a tenth, ba'asher tit asher, in order that you will become rich. Yochal v'tzorech lahosif, you can add on giving to others even more than 1/10 of your possessions, or even 1/20th of possessions. Give even more. Why? Even before God adds on to you, and the more that you add on, so God will also add to you as well. He will reciprocate and add to you. And all this is the days before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is now. Rosh Chodesh Nisan is on Thursday. Now it's only Tuesday. How much more so from Thursday and onward, that then everything is really brand new. It's a whole new surprise in your service of God in a way of miraculousness. So therefore, you have to add on and giving the necessities of the holiday to others in a miraculous way. Huh? Who would think that you're sitting in this class, it's only to receive, right? You get nice ideas, you get the God, love, breath, blessings. Now the Rebbe is saying, hey, go into your pocket, right? And close the books, and with the esrus, the arousal from above and arousal from below, with the tzilus, with all this, take money out of your pocket and give it to a poor person. Give it to people who need it. And you can do it in a quiet way. You can do it by means of somebody else. And do it with a smile. Yeshlos, if we can say that, according to what we said before, that in this month, it's the first commandment, which is commanded to the Jewish people, is sanctifying the month. Renewal, month, the word for month in Hebrew also means to be new. Harizeh, this is also attached to the commandment of charity. How? Giving the necessities of the holiday for those people who need it. That the commandment of giving charity is equal to all of the other commandments, giving charity. In the whole Talmud Yerushalmi, it's called just the commandment, because that's the main commandment, is giving from yourself to people who need it. Giving charity. Al derech, like it says, achodesh lachem. I happen to know people that are not religious at all. They don't shop, but they give massive amounts of charity. And they give massive amounts of charity to people who need it. The people who need it. That they don't get any deduction from their tax returns or whatever. They give massive amounts of charity. There are people like that. They're just tremendously generous. Jews. I mean, I'm just not acquainted with non-Jews that much, but I know there are people, Jews, that are tremendously kind and giving people. Especially, that's one of the outstanding features of the Satmar Hasidim. They're very strict, and they're very this, and they're very, they're against the Zionists and everything, and they give charity with such a tremendous amount, and they give it in secret. They themselves know about it, and I know some of them that know amazing amounts of charity, and they give. And to people that are not religious, and the people that are Zionists, and the people that they give to, just as an example. So you can't tell from the outside that some people's hearts are just amazing. And that's what he says, that's the first and most important commandment of the Torah, to give from yourself, because our life is total charity. God gives us everything for free. He's just giving. And also when you give charity, you're giving your whole being. You could use that money to do something else with it, right? To get your own pleasure from it. This is all of your limbs, the commandments, all of the limbs This awakens all the limbs of God. Shenitztavu, that the Jewish people are commanded. And not only that, that by means of charity, there is also nitvosef, also learning Torah. When you give charity, it says, when you give charity, it opens up your mind and your heart 1,000 times more. And charity means giving money, that's charity, but also charity also is include what's called gemilut chasadim. Sometimes just giving a good word to somebody, sometimes just listening to someone. Someone has troubles, you just listen to him. That can be the biggest charity of all. They made a survey in the university, somebody saw this, they served something like 90% or something like that, people that attempted suicide that didn't succeed. They asked them, so why did you attempt suicide? They asked different questions about the people. 90% or 80%, whatever, they didn't have anyone to talk to. They had no one to talk to. They were just inside of themselves. And then there was no one to pour their. A lot of times, the biggest charity you can do to somebody is just to listen to them. Just to listen. You don't have to even do anything and say anything, right? So listen, say, okay, yeah, I understand. Right? Listen, okay, so will you let me come and live in your house? Says, listen, I don't know about that. But listen, I realize your problem. I don't know if I can give you everything that you want. But just the fact that somebody listened, right? The famous, the bartender or whatever. I personally think, and this is my own personal feeling, and I'm sure that it's true, is that all these different methods of psychiatry, Freud and Adler and the Gestalt and all these things, 99% of it is just to give the therapist or the worker, whatever it is, the doctor, the ability to do all these mind tricks. I'm finding that how is this inferiority complex? How is this, is the Oedipus complex? How is it this? It gives him to do that. He's willing to listen to the person. He's really listening to. Really, all of his tricks are almost worthless. Freud and all these people, all their methods are close to worthless. Not totally worthless, but not close to worthless, right? But what does it do? So it works because it gives while the doctor is thinking all these things, what is this problem? Meanwhile, the person is talking to him and he's listening. He's listening to what the person, as someone that's listening to him. Sometimes that can be the biggest charity that you can do to give to a person, is just to sit and to listen to what he says. That's also charity. But here the Rebbe is talking about charity giving from your pocket, right? To sit and listen is difficult. To take from your pocket is almost impossible. To do that is that's the best preparation of all for Passover, and that's the message of the Rebbe for today, preparing for Passover. And now we're going to learn the Yom Yom.